All right, we're going to get things kicked off. So afternoon, everyone. Excited to be chatting with you. Got a nice big group of folks that are excited to chat about this today. So we're going to talk through a webinar today on the top trends in customer success. So to introduce myself, my name is Mark Stoddard. I run sales and marketing here at ClientSuccess, and I'm joined by Dave Blake, founder and CEO of ClientSuccess and the founder of the CS100 Summit. Hey, Dave.
Hey, everybody. How are you? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, we're thrilled to do this. And basically, the plan for the webinar today is we want to, yes, talk through a bunch of trends that are going on in customer success, but more specifically, we're excited to share with you a bunch of the topics that came up at our annual 2019 CS100 Summit last month that we held up here in Sundance, Utah. Dave, tell us a little bit about the summit.
Thanks everybody for joining. As Mark said, I'm Dave Blake, founder and CEO of ClientSuccess. And we are, every year we host a summit called the CS100 Summit. It's in September, and it's what we wanted to do was build the best experience summit that you could have for CS leaders. And so we created, the reason why it's called CS100, it's focused on the top 100 leaders. And we want to develop an experience where there's high networking, high impact, knowledge sharing, and a lot of fun. So we hosted up at Sundance Resort. Anybody on the crowd, if you've been to Sundance Resort, give us a shout out in the chat. But if you've never been there, it's right here where ClientSuccess is headquartered in Silicon Slopes in Utah, Robert Redford's resort. And we bring in excellent speakers and great customer success leaders for 3 days of great fun and content. There are people from all over the world who come from some of the biggest brands out there. This was a group of the logos of those who came this year, and we'd love to see even more in the coming years. So if you haven't been to CS100 before, if you haven't been to Utah, we really encourage you and welcome you there. And so we're excited this year this afternoon to talk a little bit about some of the themes that came from the excellent speakers at the CS100 Summit this year.
Yes, we had some really fantastic speakers. And one of the big reasons we decided we wanted to do this webinar is that, every year we have this event, and every year it's oversubscribed. There's a lot more people that want to join than we're able to house up at the resort, because Dave mentioned it's limited to about 100, 150 people. But we're aware that due to that, there's a lot of people that want the content that haven't been able to get access to it in years past. So we decided to do this webinar, and you can see we had some great speakers: Ryan Smith from Qualtrics, Greg Danes from Client Velocity, other really fantastic thought leaders like Carrie Bodine and Linda Crawford. On this screen, you can see a bunch of the other really fantastic speakers like John Herstein, Chief Customer Officer at Box, Julie Persofsky from Winning by Design, and several other folks. And it was, as is always the case, it's a ton of real action-packed, really good content. And so what we're not going to do is we're probably not going to do like a detailed run through of every single speaker and everything that they did. We're going to highlight a few of the speakers, but we're going to just kind of try to focus on some of the big trends that came out of the content that was shared. So here's some of the trends that we'll talk through. One is why customer success shouldn't be afraid to own a number. That's a big topic of discussion throughout the industry. So we're going to spend some time talking through that and highlight some of the things that Julie Persofsky shared. After that, we're going to talk through some of the top excuses that you see from customer success teams and highlight a few of the things that Greg Dane shared with the group there. We're going to go through what Carrie Bodine shared about how you can craft and build a customer experience from start to finish. She has some really good diagrams and methodologies to think through that I think will be really helpful. John Herstein from Box had some really cool insights on how to create a customer-centric culture. And then finally, we'll wrap it up with what Jonathan Kim from AppQs shared on how they use growth CSMs at AppQs to really focus on maximizing customer impact. And so let's start with Julie. So if you guys aren't familiar with Julie, she's a partner over at Winning by Design. They're a really well-known sales, marketing, customer success consultancy. And she shared a bunch of thoughts that we thought would be really helpful for you, specifically on how customer success has the potential to really have an exponential impact on the profitability of a SaaS business. And so one thing she started with was a really well-known growth formula. A lot of us who have been in SaaS for a long time have seen some version of this formula when you're thinking about growing your software company. So you have your MRR, which is your monthly recurring revenue, or annual recurring revenue, depending on how you look at it. You multiply that by churn, the revenue that you lose, upsell, the revenue that you gain from existing customers, and then you carry that to the number of periods. And so she started off sharing with this. A lot of us were familiar with this, but really where it hit home for a lot of folks is when she started to look at it from the angle of this graph. So she showed this graph, which is really the formula. Sorry, so as you can see on this, the y-axis shows the profitability of a customer, and the x-axis shows really how long they've been a customer. So for most SaaS companies, they follow this path. Early on, you're paying back your sales, your marketing costs that you spent to acquire that customer. Then once you pay back that initial investment, each period that the customer stays, they got the potential to really be exponentially more profitable. And obviously, we would all like to be sitting here with a ton of customers that you see on the far right side of this graph. What she then did is she brought back the same growth formula, but really put in the lens of kind of who owns what at each stage of the journey. And so for most software companies, you see sales probably has the biggest impact on the core MRR number because they're constantly out there acquiring new customers every single month. But if you look at the rest of this formula, you see that the rest of the formula is owned, she says, by customer success. I'd say it's kind of a combination of customer success and product. But really at the end of the day, you can see that the biggest impact on the potential profitability and the biggest impact on revenue for a software company really has the potential to sit inside customer success and product. And so Dave, she also shared this really cool example of how Adobe went through this transition from being more of a traditional kind of license-based on-prem software company to more of a SaaS company that they are today, and how they grew from a $4 billion to a nearly $100 billion company over the course of 5-6 years. You're obviously very close to the Adobe story. Kind of curious to get your thoughts on what Julie's sharing here.
Yeah, and thanks, Mark. And maybe what I'll do is back up just a bit back to this slide. Because I think there's the evolution of customer success in SaaS and beyond is very exciting. Because if you think about several years ago, it was all about us trying to raise our hand and say, hey, we deserve a seat at the table. When are we going to get it? And how do we get a seat at the table? That's frankly, that conversation's gone away right now. And CEOs and SaaS companies are more and more understanding the value of customer success. And more importantly, the growth and that customer success is driving. And a couple of key notes that I've seen out in the industry. One is that I often see now VPs of customer success or chief customer success officers have a larger quota than their sales counterpart. When you think about renewals and expansion quotas. And so this shift of influence of customer success within an organization is significant, and that's something we should all be proud of establishing that. The second thing that is interesting is that for those of you who follow along on, there's an annual SaaS survey that's released out every year. Mm-hmm. It's by KeyBank this year, and it's in conjunction with David Sachs. And they go out and they survey all the SaaS companies of all sizes. And the results this year were very interesting. They just released it a few weeks ago, but it said, there's one slide that caught my attention that said, when you look at new ARR or MRR generated in a company, 37% of all new ARR generated in a company is done through expansion and upsells and renewals. And then that's what Julie's saying here, is that there's such a big portion of the revenue that customer success is responsible for. That we should not be afraid to own that. We should not be afraid to step up, be proud of it, develop the skills to own that. And she, she stated it in her presentation that it's okay. We can still maintain our trusted advisor relationship by having a growth perspective, not sales at all costs, but a growth perspective. It's seeing our customers grow, and in turn we grow.
And you've seen a big transition also, like not just in customer success, but also in sales around how you can actually build a sales team that has trusted advisor status and what are the things that you need to do. And so I think there's a lot that customer success teams can learn from what sales teams have been doing in order to build more consultative, thoughtful sales processes. And so I think there's a lot to learn there.
Yeah, and again, don't get me wrong. I don't think what I'm not advocating, and what Julie's not advocating us all customer success professionals to turn into sales, but we should be savvy enough to have those discussions. We should be focused on the customer, understanding their needs, and then we're a natural trusted advisor that they will want to come to say, hey, I need more seats, right? I want to learn more about your product, and we should do that. Going back to the slide that Mark brought up and Julie highlighted, my background, I spent a lot of time with Adobe. I used to run global enterprise and strategic customer success for a big portion of their business before founding ClientSuccess. And I was if you look at this slide that we show on the screen right now, this shows Adobe's evolution from 2013 to 2019 and how they've grown the business. That at the beginning of this slide was right during an exciting time that I was actually there. And that was the transition of their business from a perpetual software license to a SaaS business, and a significant investment at that time in customer success and broader in customer experience. And this shows the transformation that business had by focusing on customer success and customer experience, where they took their SaaS business from $4.2 billion SaaS business to a $95 to $100 billion SaaS business. And so our value is validated. We don't need to worry about that and have that complexity or concern right now. We just need to embrace it and have the pride and continue to innovate in our field.
Cool, very good. And there was a ton of other stuff that Julie went through, and so we don't have time to go through everything that she went through, but let's move on to the next one that I wanted to highlight. So Greg Danes, he's an industry thought leader and consultant, founder and CEO of a company called Client Velocity. And he shared some really interesting insights around what he calls the 3 toxic excuses of customer success. And so really what they come down to, and I'll give it away right at the beginning. 1 is a toxic excuse to blame product. 2, blame sales. And 3 is to blame, let's call it, lack of resources. And so oftentimes, like, you kind of think of customer success as being at the end of the, let's call it, the customer conveyor belt. So product builds a product, marketing gets people interested, sales gets them to spend money on the product, and then customer success comes in and they kind of pick up the pieces and make sure that hopefully that customer sticks around and stays happy forever. So really he goes into each of these. So if we talk about blaming the product, so a lot of the excuses that you hear from customer success teams is the product doesn't do X, Y, and Z. We have a feature list of all these features that customers want, and we don't have those yet. And what Greg challenged the entire audience to think about is, yep, we all have this feature list of a bunch of stuff that customers want and that they're talking about. But if you look at it on the other side, each of you has a bunch of happy customers that are happy with your product as it sits today. And if you look at the group of really happy customers that are perfectly content with how your product is today, and this other group of customers that really focused on what it doesn't do, typically, if you look at the processes and the systems that your happy customers use versus your others, there's oftentimes a lot of interesting insights. So he shared a bunch of examples of how he'd go into companies and without changing anything about a product roadmap, just focus on the really successful customers and what are the processes and systems that they have, and building playbooks around those, and then educating kind of the rest of the customer base. And oftentimes maybe not solving all those customers' problems, but able to bring a significant portion of customers into a much better place by fixing their systems and their process. So,
Yeah.
I mean, Dave, like what have you seen around that, I guess?
Yeah, for those who have never heard Greg Dane speak or read his content, I really encourage you. Just like Julie, Greg is an awesome thought leader in the space and really changing our mindset and our paradigm about customer success. This concept of blaming the product, that's easy for us to do, as you said, Mark, and as Greg said. And we tend to really focus on churn analysis. Why are they leaving? And we try to really focus on the churn. Mm-hmm. Greg has always tried to change our perception and say, stop focusing on churn. Focus on your most successful customers. And in this case, there are customers out there who are getting great value for our customer with our product, even with all the flaws it may have. And so all of us should think about, let's dive deep into understanding what value they are getting from the product, mm-hmm. why they value it, how are they using it, and then double and triple down on those items, and that we'll have a bigger success in improving our product by aligning with those that succeed with it, mm-hmm. versus just always focusing on those customers that are churning.
That's a good segue into the next one, because the other toxic excuse here is blame sales. And so, me being a guy who's spent the majority of my career in sales, this is one that, I've lived firsthand, and sales is always an interesting potential one to point the finger at, because we've all seen examples of times where sales potentially did one thing or another to set up a customer, not necessarily in the best way possible. What Greg told us to focus on, though, is if you think about the majority of all your customers, regardless of how sales sold them, sales can come in and typically 9 times out of 10, at the time the customer bought, sales can tell you why they bought. And that's interesting insight, right? Because that's the first time that you get somebody to spend money with you. Like that's really good to know. However, if you think about it, customer success is the group that tells and should understand why customers stay. And if we go back to the Julie example, the reason that customers stay is more important oftentimes than the reason customers bought, because that's really where the profitability of the business is. And so what he challenged all the CS leaders in the room to do is really own that narrative, know exactly why customers stay, and then make sure that you're in charge of codifying that, building that into process, but also make sure that you're sharing those reasons that your customers are staying back with product, back with marketing, and back with sales, so that they can focus on making sure that not only are they going to bring in new customers that are going to buy, but more importantly, making sure that they're going to bring in new customers that are going to stick around for a long time. Dave, I mean, what else have you seen around kind of like the sales, potential conflict between sales and customer success?
Hey, Mark, as a sales leader that you are, I'm sure you always feel like you got the bullseye on your back.
Right.
Your team does.
Every month.
And all sales leaders feel like that. It's easy for us to inherit a customer and then say, hey, we have all these problems because we didn't sell to the right customer.
Yep.
The bullseye that Greg talks about, as Mark said, is really identifying, using the insights of why they stay to understand who our ideal customer profile is, mm-hmm. and then not being afraid to be very explicit about that when we're marketing to customers, that we're publishing it on our website. I know that the case study that he shared, they found six reasons why customers stay. And they not only train sales to sell to that profile, but they put it on the website so that people, when they come to the website, that persona they can relate to and drive more value. So, yeah, I think his insights were really thoughtful in that regard as well.
Gotcha. And so the last one that he mentioned, and I don't think any of us work in a company where we haven't been able to blame this at one point or another, is just the tendency to blame lack of resources. And that's probably the biggest challenge around all these toxic excuses. Is the fact of the matter is, for most companies, every one of these is true at one point or another. And that's why it becomes like so toxic to let yourself lean into that. But if you think about the lack of resources, the big thing that Greg, I heard him challenge everyone to do is to say, what you have to do is you have to be really ruthless about, or maybe methodical is the right term to say, let's look at every single thing that we're doing and making sure that every single activity that we're doing, every call that we make, every product that we build, every piece of content we put on the website, let's make sure that every single one of those activities actually leads toward long-term customer success. And if you find things that you're doing that are not leading to that goal, get rid of it. There's been plenty of times in my career where I've been looked at what I've been doing and said, okay, I'm doing 10 things today, but if I stop doing 5 of those things, is it really going to matter? Well, do that same thing as you're thinking about your customers. Dave, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, some firsthand experience in this regard. When I was at Adobe, again, I'll draw back on that experience. We got to a point where we found our CSMs doing a lot of activities that we labeled as non-value activities. It was just basically our CSMs become the catch-all for all parts of the customer experience that weren't positive, whether it be support challenges, escalations, product issues. And we did and I'm sure all the CSMs on the call can relate to that. We did a deep dive analysis, and we did what Greg suggested. We identified all of the quote non-value activities that take up our day, and listed those. And we had each of our CSMs actually for a week keep track of all of their time and all of the non-value activities, and we compared that to the value activities. So non-value activities would be like answering support tickets when our support team could do that, or other things like that. And then value activities are real conversations around customer value and those things. And what we did is we documented that, we measured it, and then we made concerted efforts to look at each of those non-value activities and say, how do we really solve this problem at scale, or how do we get it to the resources that should resolve it? That was a very enlightening exercise, and we measured that quarter over quarter until we dropped a significant portion of those resources, and all of a sudden, or those activities, and all of a sudden we saw that we didn't need to hire more resources, like Greg said. Focus on the fundamentals, eliminate all the non-value activities, and then scale the fundamentals, not at that point, is what Greg is sharing with us.
Yeah, good point. All right, cool. So to recap where we at. So we have Julie talks first about, the importance of, owning a number. Greg comes in, talks about how to solve the 3 toxic excuses. Let's move to our next presenter, who is Carrie Bodine. And so she's founder and thought leader of Bodine Enterprises. And so she shared a bunch of really cool insights on how you can build profitable customer experiences and really crafting out your customer journey. And Dave, how about you walk us through what she shared a little bit?
Yeah, you bet. So I'm a big fan of Carrie Bodine, as I am all of these thought leaders. Carrie Bodine she wrote a book that I recommend all of you read. It's called Outside In. It's having us change our perspective from an inside out perspective to an outside in. And so she came, and she's a big advocate around customer experience and with that, customer journey mapping. And her presentation, she gave this enlightening insights of showing this journey map. And on this slide, she talked about this mountain of a customer journey where there's all these touch points directly with the customer. Some of them are good and some of them bad, and you can see the smiley and frowning faces that represent that. And the importance to realize how important it is to take a step back and deliberately and proactively do what she calls journey management, to engage in journey management. And that's all about discovering the journey, understanding what our customers' needs are and what is and what they really need, not what we need, not to improve our business, but how can we deliver an amazing experience for them. Then designing it, being deliberate about designing an amazing customer journey, and then delivering. At the end of the day, you have to deliver on it. The interesting paradigm shift, she said, is that mountain is actually the tip of an iceberg in reality, because what the customers experience is impacted by everything in our business. It's impacted by the people, our processes, our technology, decisions that are made, even compensation. All of these micro elements in our business actually have a lot of times flow up and somehow impact the customer.
Yeah, and something we'll talk about when we
Yeah.
get to John's point in a little bit later is making sure that all these different elements that you're talking about here, or making sure that all the people that are making these decisions are thinking about it with the customer in mind. Because a lot of these processes you're talking about, the budgets, the culture, I've seen cases where a lot of these things are done just thinking about ourselves and thinking internally, not thinking about how they impact the customer.
Yeah, we need to have that outside in mentality. Take the perspective, look through the lens of our customers, and then design from them, and then go and make sure our organization, all of this stuff under the water that you see on this slide, supports an amazing customer experience. That's all about that discovery and that design and the delivery. She talked about a way to do that. She referenced this methodology from the Stanford D School, which is their design school, that talks about going through a process of empathizing the customer, really understanding them, walking in their shoes, spending a significant amount of time with our customers to understand their needs, then defining the journey, going through and thinking about that, and then ideating. And that means brainstorming significantly, not throwing everything out there and then coming back and defining a prototype and testing it, and using that prototype and testing to go back and refine. It's a cycle of refinement over time, and I love the way she approached that. And then the last thing she talked about is that there's a lot of large companies right now, more and more, are adding a new role to their company called a journey manager. And what this is it's somebody who has responsibility across all functional departments. They're not siloed in a department. They're empowered to engage across all departments and really be accountable to developing this customer journey. So they understand the needs, they create the vision, they make the business case, they herd, she uses the term, and it's herding cats across all the stakeholders, and then measuring the impact to make sure that you're constantly improving. I see a lot of people, she advocates for a journey manager role. A lot of people use the title experience management or a customer experience team. Both of those are key, but love what Carrie, her thought leadership in the space around owning the customer experience and managing it.
Very good. Let's jump to the next one. So John Herstein, Chief Customer Officer at Box, and he had a bunch of really cool insights on what they're doing at Box to build what he calls a customer-centric culture. And what he did is he started off by thinking about how the overall industry of software has really changed over the last 20 years. If you think 20, 25 years ago, most software purchases went through something that looks like on the left of this slide. There were very centralized purchasing decisions that had really large, big bang implementations, very well-defined scope, hard boundaries that you would be implementing for a decade or more. And so when you make that investment, you're locked into that vendor for 10, 15, 20 years. And this was very common of the older enterprise, software and hardware relationships. That's all changed. So to where now you have people that are bringing whatever they want to use to work. I mean, thinking about most companies, if you're in IT, you're figuring out how to support all the different technologies that all your employees are bringing in and making sure that they're secure and able to deploy across your enterprise. Stuff needs to be agile. It needs to be flexible. You need to have a very quick time to value because people are paying you on a monthly subscription. And so if they churn on you, you're not going to be profitable on that account. Instead of doing 10 to 15 year lockups, most of us are selling, 1 to 3 year subscriptions. And instead of buying like a massive platform from one specific company, people today are used to focusing on best of breed tools. I'm going to get this tool from vendor A, this tool from vendor B, this tool from vendor C. And so one of the things that they're doing a lot at Box is they're thinking about all the people in their organization, and they're wanting to make sure that everybody in the organization always has the customer top of mind. And so we started off thinking about this graph. And if you think about this slide, the customer's at the middle, and you can see typically sales and customer success, they're kind of tied to this inner concentric circle. They're kind of the closest to the customer, and that's traditionally the case. And if you back out one level, you kind of have your product and your marketing team. And then if you back out another level, your operations, your engineering, your finance, and your people, these are people that, you know, might go years in a lot of companies without ever really talking to a customer. And he shared this really interesting example. There's a job at Box. He shared this example of, there's somebody whose job is, you know, they'll work at a data center. They'll work at a data center in Northern Nevada, and their job every single day is to go in, take computers off of a truck, and go in and install them in a data center. And traditionally, you know, that person in a lot of companies doesn't spend 2 minutes thinking about the customer. But at Box, you know, they realize that the work that person's doing, them installing that computer in that data center, within 2 to 3 days of them installing that computer can be holding files for clinical trials at AstraZeneca that is working on some type of a cure for cancer. And so, like, driving through the work that everyone's doing and the impact it has on customers. One of the things John shared is that every Sunday night for the last few years, he works with their CEO, and they will send out a customer story every Sunday night to the entire company. And so they come from different industries, they come from different geographies, they come from all over the place. And the whole idea is they're trying to make sure that at least once a week, a bare minimum, these folks on the outer end of the concentric circle are really thinking hard about the impact that Box is having for their customers. And so there's a lot of cool things that, there's a bunch of other stuff that he shared there. And Dave, let me have you run with this slide. So he talked about, you know, the different things you need to do to really truly be customer-centric here.
Yeah, you bet. So John is a great guy, rich experience, as Mark said, at Box. I love what they're doing at Box. These key tenets that they adhere to there, or they align to, are awesome. So certainly customer outcomes. It's really just understanding our customers' definition of value, their needs, their goals, and the objectives, and then aligning the rest of the organization around those. He says communicate it relentlessly. That's communicate it internally and making sure that you're the evangelist for your customers and their needs internally, either at scale or individually as customers. We talked about understanding the customer's perspective. Customer success is the lens for the customer perspective. They're the mouthpiece, the representatives to help make sure the organization understands that. And relationships. There's no question there that a big role of ours is building relationships that our customers, we develop that trust with our customers. We're the voice of the customer. We need to amplify it, understand of it, and both to improve products and services. And then he's got the concepts that I love around customer delight. Box says that they want to blow their customers' minds. They want to deliver an exceptional customer experience. And so that's everything they do. And then their goal is at the end is to create an army of fanatical advocates. This, I think, is what we're all trying to do. I think these are core tenets of any customer success organization. But I love the fact that what Box has done is they've created a culture of customer success where everybody in the company is aligned to these. They think about them every day and executing on those with their customers.
Awesome. Really good. So we're going to highlight one more speaker that came. And so this is Jonathan Kim, and he brought a really cool, unique perspective to the conference, because most of the people there are more in, let's call them traditional customer success, customer experience type roles. Jonathan's a chief product officer. So he comes from the product side, and he runs product for a company based in Boston called AppQs. And they really help companies implement product-led growth. And everything that they've got is really built around growth. And so one of the concepts that they brought in is this idea of specifically calling somebody a growth CSM. And you can see here that growth CSM is really empowered to drive successful outcomes for the customer. They have deep alignment with their product teams. They surface insights from the customer and pass them on to developers. And they have robust access to user-level product data. So this is really somebody who is focused on growth and thinking about it that way. So if you think about most companies or different policies that you see from different companies, oftentimes they kind of drive to this idea of minimum success. And minimum success in his mind is just don't churn. And if that's your goal, if that's really what you're trying to accomplish, it's going to cause you to implement policies up and down your organization that might look like this. So like you might go to your sales and marketing team and say, you know what, let's focus on making it harder to sign up. And let's make sure that at all costs, we don't sell to bad fit customers. If all we're trying to do is make sure that customers don't churn, we're going to make those type of decisions at the sales and marketing level. On the product side, we're really just going to focus on getting it set up and making it really hard to rip out. And the customer success team at that point really just focuses on putting out fires because, again, the whole goal of this organization is just minimum success, which is don't churn. And so what their mindset is with the growth CSM, they're trying to maximize success. They're trying to do everything they can to maximize outcomes, maximize success for their customers. So in their case, they've looked at those same departments and they said, okay, instead of just having our marketing, our sales team try to turn away bad fit customers, we're going to make sure that our marketing, everything that we do, educates our visitors to the best that we possibly can. And if you go to their website, I'd recommend everybody here go to appcues.com and just journey their website. It's very educational. They have a lot of really good content on product-led growth. If you're interested in that topic, they're one of the best places to go for that. On the sales side, instead of just focusing on not selling to bad fit customers, they make sure that their sales motion is flexible enough to give prospects all the time that they need in order to make a decision. So they have some companies that are using them for really long periods of time before they actually ask for a sales decision. Product side, instead of focusing on making it hard to rip out, actually making it enjoyable and delightful that people want to be in there. And then on the customer success time, instead of just focused on putting out fires, really focusing on creating customer value. And so it was a really unique and kind of interesting way to view the idea of a CSM. And I think a lot of companies across the industry are trying to move from more the negative to some of the concepts that Jonathan talks here with the growth CSM. Dave, I'm curious to get your thoughts on what are you seeing trend-wise in the industry around this concept?
Yeah, I love what Jonathan's saying. And those who have heard me speak in the past, I'm a big believer on focusing on the positive. I hate the concepts of negative churn and some of these things. I hate the even word retain or retention because it feels like that all we do is hold on to people's legs as they're walking out the door. Mm-hmm. So, with Jonathan, I think that customer success and product is now kind of the new sales and marketing, brother-sister relationship. I love the concept that he has about having somebody sit between them who really understands the customer more than anybody in the company and is, again, empowered to engage with the product team to really help them develop and design and evolve directly for the customer. Mm-hmm. So I love his concept of the customer. I think you call it the growth CSM. Mm-hmm. Yep. And I love the fact that he said is how do we a big trend out there. Another trend out there is that some people are saying that maybe that the customer success team should own the expansion number. And really, product team should own the retention number. Yeah, that's right. And they should be responsible for being held accountable for the churn because at the end of the day, for SaaS companies, it's really the product is such a major foundation mm-hmm. that determines the outcomes exactly. for these customers. So, exactly. Love what Jonathan has done. Their product and his philosophy is really resonated with me.
Cool, awesome. Well, I wish we could spend another, couple hours going through all the different trends that came up, and we were thrilled with the content, and we're glad that we got to share a lot of this with you today. And I'm hoping that us going through this got everybody on the call excited about the idea of potentially even coming to next year's summit. So we have next year's summit locked and loaded. We're going to be doing it next September 15th through the 17th. We're going to keep it at Sundance. It is an awesome venue. People really enjoy it. And so we're going to do that next year. So keep an eye out for it over the next couple months. We're going to start registering folks. And so if you're on our email list, you'll hear plenty about it over the next few months.
Yeah, hopefully you got just a taste of it. One thing that I'd also note is that the full videos of these presentations are online at the ClientSuccess YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So if you want to go out there and look at those, you can also see historical videos there from years past. But all of these are great thought leaders, and are, their insights are really helping us change the game in the industry. So thanks for the opportunity, Mark. I'm glad I could be here and join you for the discussion.
Cool. Yeah, happy to. And just one other thing, kind of before we wrap things up. So, we were thrilled to be able to share this with you and share everything that we did at CS100. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is, the other 360 some odd days a year that we're not running CS100, Dave and I are really focused on building the team here at ClientSuccess. And so those of you who may not be aware, let me just go back into full screen mode here. For those of you who aren't aware, ClientSuccess, we're a customer success growth platform, and we partner with CSMs, we partner with customer success executives and other executives to really scale and grow customer success best practices. We help CSMs do everything that they need to do in order to ensure successful customer outcomes. And if you'd like to learn a little bit more about not just CS100, but how you could actually partner with ClientSuccess to help and grow your customer success team, implement best practices, grow all the outcomes that you want to have for your customers, feel free to reach out. You can reach me anytime. My email address, I'll send that out to you in the follow-up email. But our mindset here is we're trying to build a growth community that not just focuses on software, but really focuses on software, tools, best practices, training. And that's why we've put such a big investment in our content, in our CS100 conference. And we'd love for, if you're interested to learn more, love to talk with you a little bit more about it. So thanks so much for joining us. We wish we could talk for another hour or so, but glad that you all could join us, and we'll sign off until next time. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.